Hashtag the Reaper Protocol. Part 1. The Ghost in Scrubs. Aubrey Walsh kept her eyes on the floor as she walked through the emergency room of Naval Medical Center, San Diego. The overhead fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows that made her look smaller than her 5'4" frame already was. Her dirty blonde hair fell in deliberately messy strands around her face, obscuring the thin white scar above her left eyebrow. The medium blue scrubs she wore were 2 sizes too large, hanging loose on a body that moved with calculated clumsiness. She was invisible. That was the point. Walsh, Dr. Preston Blackwell's voice cut through the ambient noise of the ER like a scalpel. How many times do I have to tell you the IV goes in the left arm for surgical prep? Left. Can you manage that, or should I assign this to someone competent? Aubrey flinched, her shoulders hunching forward in practiced submission. Yes, doctor. I'm sorry, doctor. Her voice barely rose above a whisper, the words catching in her throat as if she were perpetually on the verge of tears. Beside him, a young woman who had learned quickly that agreeing with Blackwell was the fastest path to advancement. This is what happens when they lower standards, Blackwell said loud enough for half the ER bar to hear. We get nurses who can't handle basic protocols. Aubrey's hands trembled as she picked up the medication tray. The trembling was deliberate, carefully calibrated to appear genuine without actually affecting her motor control. Beneath the loose scrubs, her body was compact and athletic, the product of thousands of hours of training that no one in this hospital could imagine. Small shrapnel scars dotted the backs of her hands, barely visible unless someone looked closely. No one ever looked closely at Aubrey Walsh. She hurried toward room 3, head down, steps short and hesitant. She could feel eyes on her from the other staff, a mixture of pity and contempt. The incompetent nurse, the one who somehow passed certification but clearly didn't belong in a high-stakes military hospital. She had been working at Naval Medical Center for 8 months now. 8 months of deliberate mistakes. 8 months of trembling hands and swallowed pride. 8 months of being exactly what she needed to be, forgettable. As she entered room 3, the patient gave her a sympathetic smile. He was a young sailor awaiting appendectomy, maybe 22 years old, trying to be brave despite obvious pain. Rough day, he asked gently. Every day, Aubrey said softly, her voice barely audible. She inserted the IV with hands that appeared to shake, but found the vein on the first try. Muscle memory didn't lie even when everything else did. The sailor didn't notice. No one ever noticed. Aubrey was checking his vitals when the ER doors exploded inward with a blast of hot California air and controlled chaos. 4 Navy corpsmen rushed through the entrance, pushing a gurney at a dead sprint. The man on the gurney was massive, easily 6'5" and probably 260 pounds of solid muscle despite being in his 60s. His uniform was shredded and dark with blood. His face was a mask of rage and pain. 3-star Admiral, the lead corpsman shouted, his voice cutting through the ER's white noise. Admiral Garrett Thorne, multiple GSWs to the chest and abdomen, BP crashing. He's combative. We couldn't sedate him. The emergency room erupted into controlled pandemonium. Dr. Blackwell abandoned his resident and sprinted toward Trauma Bay 1. Get him in here. Someone page surgery. I want 4 units of O-negative stat. She tracked every movement with precision. Scanning the Admiral's body language, his wound patterns, the way his hands moved, even as blood poured from his chest. He wasn't just combative, he was tactical. Hold him down, Blackwell ordered as they transferred Thorne to the trauma bed. 5 medical staff tried to restrain him. It was like trying to hold down a wounded grizzly bear. Admiral Thorne's eyes were wild, pupils blown wide. He wasn't seeing the hospital. He was seeing something else entirely, something from a different time and place. Ambush! He roared, his voice like gravel grinding against stone. 12 o'clock, RPG inbound. Get to cover. His massive fist swung out, catching an orderly square in the chest. The man flew backward into a crash cart, medical equipment, scattering across the pristine white tile floor in a cacophony of metal and plastic. Restrain him, Blackwell yelled, backing away from the bed. Leather restraints now. The Admiral grabbed a nurse by the wrist with military efficiency. He twisted, rotated, and suddenly she was on the ground and he had torn free of 2 corpsmen. Blood sprayed in arterial spurts across the walls. Jesus Christ, he's going to bleed out, shouted the resident, her voice cracking with panic. Someone knock him out. I tried, a corpsman yelled back, holding up an empty syringe. He burned through 10 milligrams of Versed like it was nothing. Thorne rolled off the bed, hitting the floor hard. Immediately, he swept his hands across his chest, looking for tactical gear that wasn't there. Radio check, he gasped. I need extraction. Position compromised. He was checking corners, calculating angles, his training overriding the fact that he was actively dying. Security burst through the doors, 4 armed guards in tactical gear, hands on holstered weapons. "Stand down, sir," the lead guard commanded. "Admiral, you need to stand down." Thorne grabbed a metal IV pole, swinging it in a defensive arc. "Get back. That's an order." His voice still carried command authority even through the delirium. "I will not be captured." The security team tried to flank him. Despite 3 bullet wounds in his torso and catastrophic blood loss, Thorne read their movement instantly. He threw the IV pole like a spear, forcing them to scatter, then dropped into a combat stance that would have been impressive for a man in perfect health. For a dying 60-year-old, it was terrifying. "He's psychotic," Dr. Blackwell declared from behind an overturned gurney he was using as cover. "We need to put him under. Get me propofol, 200 milligrams IV push." "That dose will kill him," the resident protested. "If we don't stop him, he'll kill someone else first." Aubrey Walsh stood in the doorway, forgotten in the chaos. Her trembling hands had gone completely still. Her posture had shifted microscopically. Shoulders back, weight balanced on the balls of her feet. She was reading Thorne's movements like a language only she spoke. He wasn't fighting to hurt anyone. He was fighting to survive a threat that only existed in his fractured mind. Classic combat stress reaction triggered by catastrophic trauma. His brain had reverted to the moment of injury. Probably an ambush. Probably recent. Probably classified. The security team was closing in with batons drawn. If they struck him while he was in this state, they would trigger an escalation. He would kill someone, or they would kill him. Aubrey made a decision that would change everything. She stepped into Trauma Bay 1. "Walsh, get out!" Blackwell screamed. "That's an order." She ignored him. She walked slowly, deliberately toward the Admiral. Her hands were open, empty, non-threatening. Her body language was submissive, but her eyes locked onto his with an intensity that didn't match the rest of her performance. "Admiral Thorne," she said softly. Her voice cut through the chaos with unexpected clarity, a different quality than the timid whisper everyone was used to hearing. The Admiral's head snapped toward her. He was swaying, his face gray from blood loss. "Stay back," he growled. But there was less certainty in his voice now. She wasn't moving like the others. She wasn't afraid. "Sir," Aubrey said, taking another measured step forward. "You're not compromised. You're safe." "Liar," he spat. "Hostiles on every negative?" Aubrey interrupted, her voice shifting subtly. The timid nurse was gone. This voice was crisp, military authoritative. "Threat assessment complete. No hostiles present. You're in a hospital, sir. Naval Medical Center, San Diego. You're stateside." Admiral Thorne blinked, his vision focusing on her for the first time. He saw the blue scrubs, the hospital ID badge. But he also saw something else in the way she stood, the way she moved, the absolute absence of fear in her eyes. "Who?" He started, then stumbled. His knees buckled. Aubrey closed the distance in 2 quick strides, catching him before he hit the ground. She was impossibly strong for someone so small, controlling his descent with practiced efficiency that spoke of countless hours doing exactly this under worse conditions. "Easy, Admiral," she said, her voice soft again but with steel underneath. "I've got you, but you need to let us work. You're bleeding out." Can't trust," he mumbled, consciousness fading. And then Aubrey leaned close to his ear and whispered 4 words that no one else in the room could hear. "Ironside, this is Reaper." Admiral Garrett Thorne's eyes went wide. His entire body went rigid, every muscle locking. He stared at her face, truly seeing her for the first time. His expression shifted from confusion to shock to something approaching disbelief. "Reaper," he breathed, his voice barely audible. You're dead," they said. "Kandahar, 2019. "Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated," Aubrey whispered, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "Now stand down, Ironside. That's a direct order from your guardian angel." The Admiral's body went limp in her arms. Not unconscious, but surrendered. The fight drained out of him all at once, replaced by trust older and deeper than the wounds trying to kill him. "Reaper," he whispered again, his hand reaching up to touch her face as if to confirm she was real. His fingers trembled as they traced the thin scar above her left eyebrow. "The legend, you're real." "Lie down, Admiral," Aubrey said, gently easing him back onto the trauma bed that corpsmen were hastily writing. "Let us save your life. You've got a briefing to give me later." "Yes, ma'am," the Admiral said, and then his eyes rolled back and unconsciousness took him. The entire ER had gone silent. Dr. Blackwell stood frozen, his mouth hanging open. The resident looked like she'd seen a ghost. The security team had lowered their weapons, staring at the small nurse, who had just done what 6 trained men couldn't do. Aubrey turned to face them, and for just a moment, less than a heartbeat, they saw something in her eyes that made every person in that room take an involuntary step backward. It wasn't anger, it wasn't threat. It was competence so absolute, so total, that it redefined the hierarchy in the room without a single word being spoken. Then she blinked, and the trembling, timid nurse was back. Someone should probably start an IV, she stammered, her hands shaking again as she reached for supplies. He's, he's lost a lot of blood. Dr. Blackwell found his voice. How did you? I don't know, Aubrey interrupted quickly, not meeting his eyes. I talked to him. He calmed down. Can we save him, please? She was already working her trembling hands, somehow placing an 18-gauge IV line on the first stick, drawing blood for type, and cross-assessing the wounds with a speed that seemed at odds with her apparent nervousness. Dr. Blackwell watched her suspicion flickering across his face. But the Admiral was dying and questions could wait. Everyone to positions, he barked. I want a central line in. Get a chest tube kit ready. Walsh, hang the blood when it arrives. Yes, doctor, Aubrey whispered, her head down again. But as she slipped back into her carefully constructed disguise, one of the security guards stood in the doorway watching her with narrowed eyes. Wyatt Sterling was 42 years old, a former Army Ranger who had seen enough combat to recognize it in others. He had heard what she said, not the call signs, he'd been too far away, but he'd heard her voice change. He'd seen her move. He'd watched a 5'4" nurse control a 6'5" Admiral like she'd done it 1,000 times before. Sterling pulled out his phone and took a discreet photo of her hospital ID badge. Something wasn't right about Nurse Aubrey Walsh, and he was going to find out what. Admiral Thorne survived the surgery. Barely. Dr. Blackwell worked for 4 hours repairing perforated intestines, a nicked renal artery, and extracting 3 7.62mm rounds that had somehow missed every vital organ by millimeters. It was surgical skill combined with impossible luck. Or maybe not luck. Maybe someone had been protecting him. Aubrey stood in the corner of the operating room during the entire procedure, handing instruments when asked, keeping her eyes down, saying nothing. But twice when the Admiral's blood pressure crashed and Dr. Blackwell froze in indecision, Aubrey quietly adjusted the anesthesia drip and vasopressor dosages without being asked. Dr. Madeline Cross noticed. She was a 34-year-old trauma surgeon, sharp-eyed and brilliant, and she noticed things that others missed. She said nothing, but she filed it away for later. The Admiral was moved to the ICU Surgical Wing Level 3, a secure floor reserved for high-ranking military personnel. 2 armed Marines stood outside his door. A third sat inside the room watching the monitors with the intensity of someone trained to spot threats. Wanted to see if she'd crack under pressure. Maybe he was testing her. Or maybe he just didn't want to waste a competent nurse on what he assumed would be simple post-op monitoring. Keep him sedated, Blackwell ordered, reviewing the chart at the nurse's station. No visitors except command staff with clearance. If he wakes up combative again, page me immediately. Do not engage him alone. Understood. Yes, doctor, Aubrey whispered, taking the chart with trembling hands. Blackwell looked at her with narrowed eyes. Walsh, what you did in the ER today. I just talked to him. She interrupted quickly. I didn't do anything special. You called him by name. You used his rank. How did you know who he was? Aubrey's face flushed. The corpsman. They said it when they brought him in. I remembered. It was a lie. The corpsman had said it, but Aubrey had known who Admiral Garrett Thorne was the moment she saw his face. She'd known him for 15 years, though he had no memory of ever meeting her. Not as Aubrey Walsh, anyway. Blackwell didn't look convinced, but he let it go. Just watch him, and Walsh, don't touch anything you're not qualified to touch. Yes, doctor. As Blackwell walked away, Dr. Cross lingered at the station. She pulled up Aubrey's personnel file on the computer, reading through it with careful attention. Aubrey Walsh, age 32, graduated from a mid-tier nursing program in Nevada. Average grades, no military service, no prior hospital experience before Naval Medical Center. References checked out, but they were generic. Former instructors who barely remembered her. It was a perfectly unremarkable file. Too unremarkable. Cross closed the file and looked toward the ICU where Aubrey had disappeared. Something was wrong. The way that nurse had moved in the trauma bay. The way she'd controlled the Admiral. The way her hands had suddenly stopped shaking when she placed that IV line. Dr. Cross? A voice interrupted her thoughts. It was Sterling, the security guard from earlier. Can I ask you something about Nurse Walsh? Cross's eyes sharpened. What about her? How long has she worked here? 8 months. Why? Sterling shifted uncomfortably. I've been doing security here for 3 years. I've seen a lot of nurses handle combative patients. But what she did today, that wasn't nursing. That was tactical de-escalation, military grade. You think she has a service record? I think someone with her skill set doesn't just end up as a mediocre nurse, Sterling said carefully. I ran her name through the VA database. Nothing. Social Security checks out. Credit history is clean, but it's all very recent. Nothing before 2019. Cross felt a chill run down her spine. Are you saying she's using a false identity? I'm saying someone should ask her the right questions, Sterling replied, because Admiral Thorne recognized her. I saw his face when she whispered to him. He knew her. Inside the ICU room, Aubrey stood beside the Admiral's bed, checking his vitals. The Marine guard sat in the corner, watching her with the intensity of someone trained to spot threats. Thorne's face was gray, his breathing assisted by supplemental oxygen. IV lines ran into both arms. A chest tube drained blood-tinged fluid into a collection chamber. Aubrey's trembling hands moved across the equipment, checking connections, adjusting drip rates. But her eyes were scanning his wounds with a precision that had nothing to do with basic nursing. Entry wounds center mass-tight grouping, professional shooter. The rounds had tumbled after impact, creating maximum internal damage, but somehow missing the aorta and inferior vena cava. The Admiral should be dead. Someone had gotten very lucky. Or very unlucky, depending on what secrets he carried. Nurse, the Marine's voice was sharp. Aubrey jumped, her submissive posture snapping back into place. Yes. You were staring at him. What were you looking at? I was just checking his breathing, she stammered, making sure the oxygen flow is adequate. The Marine didn't look convinced. What did you say to him? In the ER, I saw you lean down and whisper something. What was it? Aubrey's heart hammered against her ribs. I just told him he was safe, that's all. He called you something, a name. What was it? I don't know what you mean, Aubrey lied, her voice barely audible. He was delirious. He was saying a lot of things. The Marine stood up, taking a step toward her. He was 6'2", muscular, intimidating. Ma'am, with respect, I've been doing close protection for 8 years. I know when someone is lying. Aubrey backed toward the door, her eyes wide, her body language screaming vulnerability. I'm not lying. I don't know anything. I'm just a nurse. Please, I need to check on other patients. The heart monitor alarm suddenly shrieked. Both Aubrey and the Marine spun toward the bed. Admiral Thorne's body was seizing his back, arching off the mattress, his teeth clenched. The monitor showed a heart rate of 180 and climbing. Code blue, the Marine yelled, lunging for the emergency button. But Aubrey was already moving. She didn't run for help. She didn't freeze in panic. She crossed the room in 3 strides, her trembling gone, her movements suddenly fluid and precise. She grabbed the Admiral's jaw, forcing his head to the side to prevent aspiration. Her other hand slammed down on the code button. VTAC, she snapped, reading the monitor. He's coding. Get the crash cart. The Marine stared at her. The terrified, stuttering nurse from 10 seconds ago had vanished. This woman had command presence. Now Aubrey roared and the Marine ran. The code team burst through the door, 30 seconds later. Dr. Cross led them, 2 nurses and a respiratory therapist behind her. They found Aubrey performing chest compressions with textbook precision, her small frame generating enough force to make the Admiral's entire body compress with each thrust. How long? Dr. Cross demanded, taking position at the head of the bed. 45 seconds, Aubrey said, not stopping compressions. VTAC deteriorated to V-fib. No pulse. I've been compressing at 110 per minute. Depth approximately 2 inches. Dr. Cross blinked. That was exact protocol. Perfect rate, perfect depth, perfect terminology. This wasn't a mediocre nurse. This was someone with advanced cardiac life support training. Charge to 200, Cross ordered. Everyone clear. Aubrey stepped back. The shock delivered. Thorne's body convulsed. The monitor showed continued V-fib. Resume compressions, Cross said. Charge to 300. Push 1 milligram epi. Aubrey started compressions again. But as she worked, Dr. Cross noticed something that made her blood run cold. Between cycles and the brief pauses, Aubrey's fingers were palpating the Admiral's chest, feeling along the ribs, checking something. Walsh, what are you doing? Cross asked sharply. Rib fracture, Aubrey said, her voice steady and clinical. Left side ribs 7 and 8. I felt crepitus. If we keep compressing at this angle, we'll drive the fracture into his lung. We need to adjust hand position 2 centimeters medial. Dr. Cross stared at her. A mediocre nurse wouldn't know to check for rib fractures during CPR. A mediocre nurse wouldn't know the term crepitus. A mediocre nurse wouldn't have the presence of mind to adjust compressions to prevent pneumothorax. How do you? Cross started. Shock him, Aubrey interrupted, stepping back. Now, Cross delivered the second shock. This time the monitor showed a rhythm. Slow, irregular, but a rhythm. Sinus bradycardia, Aubrey announced. Rate 45. Push atropine 0.5 milligrams. I didn't ask for your, Cross began but stopped. Because Aubrey was right. That was exactly the correct intervention. Cross administered the atropine. The Admiral's heart rate climbed to 70. Stable. His chest rose and fell with ventilator breaths. The room exhaled collectively. He's stable, Dr. Cross said, checking the monitor. Pulse is steady. BP is 110/70. He's back. Aubrey stepped away from the bed, and as she did, the transformation reversed. Her shoulders hunched. Her hands started trembling. Her eyes dropped to the floor. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shouldn't have. I just reacted. Dr. Cross grabbed her arm. Walsh, look at me. Aubrey didn't look up. Look at me. Aubrey raised her eyes slowly. They were wide, frightened, the perfect image of a terrified nurse who had just been involved in her first code. But Dr. Cross had seen the truth. For 60 seconds, this woman had run that code with the precision of an ICU specialist. Who are you? Cross asked quietly. I'm just a nurse, Aubrey whispered. Before Cross could respond, a weak voice came from the bed. Reaper. Everyone turned. Admiral Thorne's eyes were half open, unfocused, but he was staring directly at Aubrey. Reaper, he repeated, his voice barely audible through the oxygen mask. Kandahar, you saved 12 men. Dr. Cross's grip on Aubrey's arm tightened. What is he talking about? He's delirious, Aubrey said quickly. Post-cardiac arrest confusion. It's normal. You're the guardian angel. The Admiral slurred his hand, reaching weakly toward her. They said you died, but you're here. How? His eyes rolled back. Unconsciousness reclaimed him. The room was silent. Dr. Cross released Aubrey's arm and took a step back, her face a mixture of confusion and suspicion. Nurse Walsh, she said, her voice cold. You're relieved of duty, effective immediately. But that wasn't a request. Go home. Don't come back until we've had a conversation with HR and security. Aubrey's face went pale. Dr. Cross, please, I need this job. Then you'll answer some questions. Because right now, I don't know if you're a hero or a threat. And until I do, you're not touching another patient in this hospital. Aubrey stood frozen for a moment, then nodded slowly. She walked toward the door, head down, shoulders hunched. But as she passed the Marine guard, he saw something that made him reach for his radio. The thin scar above her left eyebrow. The small shrapnel marks on her hands. The way she moved, even in defeat, weight-balanced, always aware of exits. Control, this is Sterling, he said quietly into his radio. I need a background check. Priority level. Subject is Aubrey Walsh, RN. I think we have an infiltrator. Part 2. Operation Nightfall. Aubrey Walsh didn't go home. She drove to the parking garage, climbed into her beat-up Honda Civic, and sat in the darkness thinking. This was bad. She'd been made. Not completely, but enough that questions would be asked. Questions she couldn't answer without burning her cover entirely. She pulled a burner phone from under the driver's seat and dialed a number she'd memorized but never called. It rang once. Reaper. The voice on the other end was crisp military female. I'm compromised, Aubrey said quietly. The Admiral recognized me. Said my call sign in front of witnesses. Silence on the line. Then extraction protocol. Not yet. He's still critical. If I disappear now, they'll know something's wrong. And whoever shot him will finish the job. That's not your mission. It is now, Aubrey said firmly. He didn't get shot by accident. 3-round center mass professional grouping. Someone wanted him dead, and I'm the only person in this hospital who can keep him alive long enough to find out why. Another pause. You're requesting operational authority. I'm requesting 24 hours. If I can't secure the situation by then, I'll disappear. But Ironside knows something. Something worth killing an Admiral over. Reaper, your cover is more important than one man. He's not just one man, Aubrey said, her voice hard. He's the commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. If someone is hunting SEALs at the command level, we need to know who and why. The voice on the other end sighed. 24 hours. Then we burn your identity and relocate you. Understood? Understood. The line went dead. Aubrey sat in the darkness of her car, staring at the concrete wall in front of her. 24 hours. She had 24 hours to figure out who wanted Admiral Thorne dead, keep him alive, and do it all without revealing that Nurse Aubrey Walsh was actually Lieutenant Commander Sloan Maddox, former DevGru operator, presumed killed in action in Kandahar, 2019. Her burner phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Security footage from ER being reviewed. You have watchers. Sloan cursed under her breath and started the car. She didn't drive home. Instead, she headed to a 24-hour diner 3 miles from the hospital, the kind of place where truckers stop for coffee at 3 in the morning and nobody asked questions. She ordered coffee and sat in a corner booth where she could watch the door. Old habits died hard. She pulled out a small notebook and started writing in a tactical shorthand she'd developed during her years in the teams. If someone found the notebook, it would look like gibberish. The Admiral was shot 6 hours before arriving at the hospital. Close-range professional execution. Left alive intentionally, they wanted information first. Hospital security is compromised. Inside job. The assassin had nurse credentials and ICU access. She was circling her third option, eliminate the threat before extraction, when a shadow fell across her table. Mind if I sit? Sloane's hand moved instinctively toward her waistband before she remembered she wasn't armed. She looked up. It was Sterling, the security guard from the hospital. He slid into the booth across from her without waiting for permission, his eyes hard and assessing. "How did you find me?" she asked, her voice small and frightened. Aubrey Walsh was back. "I followed you from the hospital," Sterling said bluntly. "You're not very good at counter-surveillance for someone who's supposedly just a nurse." Sloane said nothing. She evaluated him carefully. 6'2", approximately 220 pounds athletic build, visible under his security uniform. Wedding ring. 42 years old based on the file she'd memorized when she first arrived at the hospital. Honorable discharge, Purple Heart, Bronze Star. A soldier, not an enemy. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "The truth," Sterling said. "Because Admiral Thorne is in my hospital, on my watch, and someone tried to kill him today. And the only person who could calm him down, the only person he trusts, is a nurse who shouldn't exist." "I exist," Sloane said softly. "I'm sitting right here." "Aubrey Walsh exists," Sterling corrected. "But who are you really?" Before she could answer, her burner phone buzzed again. She glanced at it. The message made her blood run cold. "Second attempt imminent. Thorne compromised. Asset inside hospital." Sloane stood up abruptly. "I have to go back." "Back where?" Sterling stood with her. "The hospital. Someone's going to try to kill him again tonight." "How do you know?" "Because that's what I would do." Sloane's mask slipped completely. Her voice was hard, tactical, commanding. "The first attempt failed. He's vulnerable in the ICU, limited security. If I were running the operation, I'd hit him within the next 6 hours before he regains consciousness and talks." Sterling stared at her. This wasn't the trembling nurse. This was a warrior. "Who are you?" he asked, again quieter this time. Sloane looked him in the eye. She made a calculated decision. She didn't have time to operate alone, and she needed someone inside the hospital who understood what was coming. "My name is Lieutenant Commander Sloane Maddox," she said quietly. "DEVGRU, SEAL Team 6. I was the first woman to pass selection. I operated for 8 years before I was declared killed in action in 2019. I've been undercover ever since. And right now, Admiral Thorne is the only person who knows where 12 missing SEALs are being held. If he dies, they die." Sterling processed this in silence. Then he pulled out his phone. "Who are you calling?" Sloane demanded. "Hospital Security Command. We're locking down the ICU. No one in or out without clearance." "That won't stop a professional." "Then what will?" Sloane's eyes were cold, gray-blue like winter water. "Me." They arrived back at the hospital 18 minutes later. The ICU floor was quiet. Lights dimmed for night shift. 2 Marines still stood outside Thorne's door, alert and armed. Sloane approached the nurse's station. The night supervisor, Patricia Drummond, looked up in surprise. "Walsh, you were sent home." "I know," Sloane said, her voice trembling again. The mask was back. "But I forgot my jacket. Can I just grab it from the break room?" Patricia frowned but nodded. "Make it quick." Sloane walked past the station, but instead of going to the break room, she slipped into the supply closet. Sterling followed, keeping watch. Inside, Sloane's hands moved with blinding speed. She grabbed surgical gloves, a scalpel, sutures, hemostatic gauze, and a small bottle of lidocaine. She stuffed them into her jacket pockets. "What are you doing?" Sterling whispered. "Preparing," Sloane said. "If someone hits the Admiral tonight, there won't be time for a code team. I'll have to stabilize him myself." "You're a nurse, not a surgeon." Sloane looked at him with eyes that had seen things he couldn't imagine. "I'm a combat medic with battlefield surgical training. I've done thoracotomies in helicopter cargo holds and cricothyrotomies under enemy fire. I can keep him alive." Sterling believed her. They exited the supply closet and nearly ran into Dr. Cross, who was reviewing charts at the station. "Walsh," Cross said sharply, "I told you to go home." "I'm sorry, Dr. Cross." Dr. Cross, I just needed to." An alarm shrieked. All 3 of them spun toward the ICU rooms. The alarm was coming from Admiral Thorne's room. The Marines outside were already moving, weapons drawn, rushing inside. Sloane ran. She burst into the room ahead of Cross, ahead of Sterling, ahead of everyone. The Admiral was seizing again, but this time it was different. This wasn't cardiac arrest, this was neurological. And standing beside his IV pump, adjusting a syringe port, was one of the night shift nurses. A man Sloane had seen before but never spoken to. His name tag read Webb. Dalton Webb. Webb looked up as Sloane entered. His eyes widened in recognition and calculation. Then he bolted. He shoved past the Marines with surprising strength and speed. One Marine grabbed for him, but Webb struck the man's throat with a precise blow that dropped him instantly. Military training, combat training. Stop him, Sloan screamed. But Webb was already in the hallway sprinting toward the emergency stairs. Sterling tackled him 10 feet from the stairwell door. They crashed to the floor hard, Webb fighting with trained efficiency that spoke of years in special operations. He drove an elbow into Sterling's ribs, rolled free, and reached for something in his pocket. Sloan was on him before he could draw it. She launched herself forward, driving her knee into his solar plexus with enough force to lift him off the ground. Webb collapsed, gasping for air, and Sloan pinned him face down, wrenching his arm behind his back with a joint lock that made him scream. "Don't move," she said quietly, her voice absolutely calm. "Or I'll dislocate your shoulder, then your elbow, then I'll start on the other arm." Sterling stared at her. The Marine stared at her. Dr. Cross, arriving in the hallway, stared at her. The trembling, incompetent nurse had just taken down a trained assassin in 3 seconds. Webb spat blood on the floor. "You're dead, Reaper," he hissed through the pain. "You and everyone you care about. Ghost Ship knows you're alive now. They'll come for you." Sloan increased pressure on the joint lock. Webb screamed and went silent. "Get him to security." Sloan ordered the Marines, her voice carrying command authority that made them obey without question. "And check his pockets." He was reaching for something, probably a weapon or a cyanide pill. The Marines hauled Webb to his feet and dragged him away. Sloan turned and ran back to the Admiral's room. She checked the IV pump. Someone had injected something into the line. She traced it back. Potassium chloride, enough to cause hyperkalemia and cardiac arrest within minutes. She ripped the IV line out, drew blood for an emergency potassium level, and started a new line with normal saline. "Calcium gluconate 10 milliliters IV push," she said, her voice steady. "He's hyperkalemic. We need to stabilize his cardiac membranes now or he'll arrest." Dr. Cross grabbed the medication and administered it without question. The Admiral's heart rhythm stabilized. The room fell silent except for the beeping of monitors. Cross turned slowly to look at Sloan. "Who the hell are you?" Sloan met her eyes. The mask was gone. The truth was standing in the middle of the ICU, covered in an assassin's blood, holding the life of an admiral in her steady, scarred hands. "I'm the reason he's still alive," Sloan said quietly. "And if you want him to stay that way, let me do my job." Before anyone could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. "Commander Maddox." Sloan turned. Standing in the doorway was a man she hadn't seen in 5 years. Master Chief Declan Grayson. 62 years old, silver-haired, still carrying himself with the bearing of someone who had spent 4 decades in the teams. He wore the uniform of hospital security director, but his eyes were pure steel. "Master Chief," Sloan said softly. "I was at your funeral," Grayson said. His voice was quiet, controlled, but there was emotion underneath. "Admiral Thorne gave the eulogy. We folded your flag, we fired the salute, we mourned you." "I know," Sloan said. "I watched from 200 yards away." The room was absolutely silent. Dr. Cross looked like she was trying to process information that didn't fit into any category she understood. Grayson walked into the room, his limp barely visible. "Old shrapnel wound from Somalia, 1993. "How long have you known?" Sloan asked. "The second you moved in that ER," Grayson said. "I trained you, Commander. I'd know that combat glide anywhere, the way you assess a room, the way your hands go still when everyone else is panicking. I knew." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I figured you had your reasons for being dead." Grayson looked at Admiral Thorne's unconscious form. "But now I need to know what's going on, because that man is more than just an admiral. He's family, and someone just tried to kill him twice in one night." Sloan took a breath. "Can we talk somewhere private?" Grayson nodded. He looked at Dr. Cross. "Doctor, keep the Admiral stable. No one comes in this room except you and the Marines." "No one." Cross nodded slowly. "Understood." Grayson led Sloan and Sterling to a small office on the same floor. When the door closed, he turned to face her. "Talk to me, Sloan." And she did. She told him about Kandahar, about the mission to rescue 12 SEALs from a Taliban compound, about how the building was rigged with explosives, about how she stayed behind to cover the team's extraction, about the explosion that buried her. "The CIA pulled me out," Sloan said quietly. "They offered me a deal. Go dark, stay useful, live in the shadows. They told me if I came back, the people who compromised that mission would hunt my team. Better I disappear than get everyone killed." "Who compromised the mission?" Grayson asked. "I don't know, but I think Admiral Thorne does." Sloan's voice was tight. "Master Chief, he was shot by a professional, 3 rounds, center mass, tight grouping. Someone wanted him dead before he could talk. And when that didn't work, they sent an asset into his ICU. Sterling spoke up. "The guy we caught, Webb, he said something about Ghost Ship. What is that?" Sloan and Grayson exchanged glances. Ghost ship is a Black Ops unit, Grayson said quietly. Officially, it doesn't exist. Unofficially, it's where operators go when they want to make money instead of serve their country. Private military contractors, assassins for hire. And someone hired them to kill Admiral Thorne, Sloan said. Which means this isn't just about one man, this is about something bigger. At that moment, Sloane's burner phone buzzed. She looked at the message and her face went pale. What is it? Grayson asked. Sloan showed him the phone. The message was simple and terrifying. Operation Nightfall, black sites, 12 SEALs, Vice Admiral Cross running cleanup. Evidence at Coronado Safe House. Jesus Christ, Sterling breathed. Grayson's face hardened. Vice Admiral Rutger Cross, Thorne's deputy, his second in command. You know him? Sloan asked. I trained with him 40 years ago. He was a good operator, hard, ruthless. But I thought he was loyal. Grayson shook his head. If Cross is running Ghost Ship, if he's the one trying to kill Thorne, then this is bigger than we thought. What's Operation Nightfall? Sterling asked. Sloane's mind was racing. I don't know, but if 12 SEALs are in black sites, if Cross is cleaning house, then Thorne must have found evidence. Proof. And Cross is trying to bury it before it goes public, Grayson finished, along with anyone who knows about it. We need to get that evidence, Sloan said. Coronado Safe House, I know that location. SEAL Team 6 debrief facility officially doesn't exist. It's a trap, Sterling said. Of course it's a trap. Sloan checked her watch. 4:15 in the morning. But I don't have a choice. If Thorne wakes up and talks, they'll kill him. If I don't get that evidence, 12 SEALs die. This is bigger than my cover. Grayson put a hand on her shoulder. Then you're not going alone. Master Chief, you're 62. You're retired. You're a security director. You're not an operator anymore. Grayson smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Neither are you, supposedly. But here we are. And I didn't spend 40 years in the teams to let some corrupt admiral murder my brothers. If you're going to Coronado, I'm going with you. Sterling cleared his throat. I'm coming too. No, Sloan said. This isn't your fight. The hell it isn't. Sterling's face was set. I swore an oath to protect people in this hospital. That includes the Admiral. Someone needs to hold the line here while you two go get the evidence. Sloan looked at both men. Grayson, 62, retired but still dangerous. Sterling, 42, Army Ranger who knew how to fight. Both ready to put their lives on the line for a mission that wasn't theirs. All right, she said finally. Sterling, you hold this floor. Don't let anyone near the Admiral except Dr. Cross. Not nurses, not orderlies, not even other security. Got it. Master Chief, you're with me. We go to Coronado, we get the evidence, we come back before Cross realizes we have it. And if it's a trap, Grayson asked. Sloane's smile was cold and sharp. Then we spring it. They were preparing to leave when Dr. Cross appeared in the doorway, her face urgent. The Admiral is awake, she said, and he's asking for Reaper. Sloan ran back to the ICU room. Admiral Garrett Thorne was conscious, his eyes focusing on her with an intensity that cut through the pain medication. When he saw her relief flooded his features. Reaper, he whispered through the oxygen mask. You're real, I thought. Hallucination. Sloan moved to his bedside. I'm real, Admiral, and you're safe. For now. Cross, Thorne said urgently. Vice Admiral Cross, he's the one. Running Ghost Ship. Found out about Nightfall, tried to kill me before I could expose him. What is Operation Nightfall? Sloan asked gently. Thorne's eyes closed. Black sites, 12 of our SEALs, captured on ops that officially never happened. Cross has been using them, interrogating them, selling intel to enemies, making billions. When I found proof, he sent Ghost Ship. Where's the evidence? Coronado, safe house. Hidden in the false wall behind the armory. 3 hard drives, documents, recordings, everything you need to bring him down. His hand grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. But Cross knows Reaper. He knows you're alive. The second you go for that safe house, he'll know. Sloan covered his hand with hers. Let him. I've been hiding for 5 years. I'm done hiding. You'll die. Maybe. But those 12 SEALs won't. And Cross won't get away with this. She leaned closer. Admiral, thank you for recognizing me. If you hadn't, I might have stood by and watched them kill you. Thorne's eyes were wet. I knew it was you the moment you touched me. You always had the steadiest hands I'd ever seen. Sloan looked down at her hands. Perfectly still. I shake now, but only when I'm pretending to be someone else. Rest, Admiral. We're going to get that evidence, and then we're bringing Cross down. 40 minutes later, Sloan and Grayson were in an unmarked SUV heading south toward Coronado. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. You ready for this? Grayson asked, checking his sidearm. He'd changed into tactical gear looking like he had 30 years ago, except for the gray hair. Always, Sloan said. She wore similar gear. It felt strange after 5 years of scrubs. Strange but right. They drove in silence. Then Grayson spoke, his voice softer. Why didn't you tell me you survived after Kandahar? Why didn't you reach out? Sloan kept her eyes on the road. Because the CIA told me that if anyone knew that I was alive, they'd be in danger. The people who compromised that mission had reach. I couldn't risk you or Thorne or anyone from my team. So you watched your own funeral. From 200 yards away, through a scope, just in case. In case what? In case the people who wanted me dead showed up to make sure. Grayson was quiet. They... 3 of them. I photographed them. Sent the images to my handler. 2 months later, all 3 were dead. Car accidents. Heart attacks. She glanced at him. No such thing as accidents in our world. No, Grayson agreed. There's not. They arrived at Coronado just after 7. The safe house looked like an ordinary beach house, faded blue paint, and weathered deck. Nothing suggested it was a SEAL operations center. Sloan approached the door and keyed in a code. The door unlocked. She entered, sidearm drawn, Grayson covering her. The interior was dark, dusty, clearly unused for months. Sloan went straight to the back bedroom, pushed aside a false panel, and found the armory. Behind the weapons rack was the false wall. Behind that, a small safe. She didn't have the combination. She didn't need it. She had a small amount of C4, just enough to blow the hinges without destroying the contents. She set the charge, backed away, and detonated. The explosion was muffled but effective. The safe door fell forward. Inside were 3 hard drives, a folder of documents, and a digital recorder. Got it, she called. That's when the windows exploded. Flashbangs detonated in every room. The world turned white. Sloan dropped behind the bed, her training overriding her senses. She fired 3 suppression rounds through the window, then rolled left as her vision cleared. 4 operators breached through the front door. Former DevGru, she could tell by their movement. They knew exactly how good she was. But they didn't know she'd gotten better. The first operator came through the bedroom door, fast sweeping with his rifle. Sloan was already behind him. She'd moved during the flashbang, using the bed frame as concealment. Her knife found the gap between his helmet and vest collar. Arterial spray. He dropped. The second operator entered, firing where Sloan had been. She wasn't there. She'd already circled to his blind side. A strike to his weapon arm, forcing the rifle down, knee to his floating ribs. As he doubled over, she drove the knife through the base of his skull. 2 down. The remaining 2 split up, professional and cautious. Sloan grabbed the digital recorder from the floor. Heavy metal. She hurled it at the operator on her left. It struck his night vision goggles, cracking the lenses. He staggered back, vision compromised. The operator on her right fired. Sloan had already dropped and rolled, coming up inside his guard. She grabbed his rifle barrel, redirected it upward, delivered a palm strike to his chin. His head snapped back, helmet cracking against the doorframe. She stripped the rifle, reversed it, and fired 3 rounds through his plate carrier at contact distance. 3 down. The last operator, his NVGs shattered, was firing blind. Sloan stayed low, moving on angles he couldn't predict. She closed the distance, swept his legs, and as he fell, delivered a strike to his throat that crushed his trachea. 4 down. 60 seconds. Grayson appeared in the doorway, breathing hard. He'd taken down 2 more operators in the living room. 6 total. You good? He asked. I'm good. Sloan grabbed the hard drives and documents, stuffing them into a backpack. We need to move. Cross will send more. They ran for the SUV. As they drove away, Sloan's phone rang. Not the burner. Her personal phone. She answered. Yes. Commander Maddox? The voice was cultured, educated, with menace underneath. This is Vice Admiral Rutger Cross. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Sloan put it on speaker. I have evidence of your crimes. Cross laughed. Crimes? I'm protecting national security. Those 12 SEALs discovered things that could destabilize our entire defense infrastructure. I'm doing what needs to be done. You're torturing American servicemen for profit. I'm ensuring dangerous information doesn't fall into enemy hands. And I'm being compensated for that service. Is that so wrong? It's treason. It's pragmatism. Cross's voice hardened. You can't stop this, Commander. Even if you expose me, there are others. This goes higher than you can imagine. Joint Chiefs, Pentagon, congressional oversight. You're one operator, we're an institution. Then I guess I'll just have to burn down the whole institution, Sloan said coldly. She hung up. Grayson looked at her. He'll come for you now, with everything he has. I'm counting on it, Sloan said. We're done running. It's time to end this. They drove back to the hospital in silence, both knowing the real war was just beginning. Part 3. Reaper Rising. The SUV's tires screeched as Sloan pulled into the hospital parking garage. Dawn had fully broken, San Diego bathed in golden morning light that seemed at odds with the darkness of what they'd just done. 6 bodies in Coronado. a vice admiral's conspiracy exposed, and a backpack full of evidence that would shake the Pentagon to its foundations. We need to get this public before Cross can bury it, Grayson said, already pulling out his phone. I have a contact at the Washington Post, Rachel Monroe, investigative journalist. If anyone will run with this, it's her. Sloan nodded, her hands tight on the wheel even though the vehicle was parked. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by the weight of what came next. How well do you trust her? Well enough. Her father was Navy, submariner. She understands what's at stake when servicemen are betrayed by their own command. Make the call. Grayson dialed, putting it on speaker. 3 rings, then a woman's voice thick with sleep. This better be important, Declan. It's 7:30 in the morning. Rachel listened carefully. I have evidence of a black ops conspiracy involving the illegal detention and torture of 12 Navy SEALs. Vice Admiral Rutger Cross, Deputy Commander of Naval Special Warfare, is running the operation. We have digital recordings, financial documents, and hard drives containing classified information proving systematic war crimes and treason at the flag officer level. Silence. Then Rachel's voice came back sharp and alert. Are you serious? Dead serious. And we need this published within 6 hours before Cross destroys the evidence or eliminates the witnesses. 6 hours, Declan. I need to verify sources, confirm authenticity, run this past legal. We're talking about accusing a 3-star admiral of treason. Sloan leaned toward the phone. You're not going to get it wrong. I'm Lieutenant Commander Sloan Maddox, Dev Group, presumed killed in action, Kandahar 2019. I'm the source, and I'm willing to go on record. Another pause. Jesus Christ, this is real. This is real, Sloan confirmed. And Cross knows we have the evidence. He's already sent 2 hit teams. There will be more. We need this story out before he can spin the narrative. Where are you, Batum? Naval Medical Center, San Diego. We're protecting Admiral Garrett Thorne, the man Cross tried to assassinate, because Thorne discovered Operation Nightfall. Rachel's voice was all business now. Send me everything you have. Encrypted email. I'll have our tech team verify the files and legal start the review. But Commander, you need to understand something. The second this goes public, you'll have targets on your backs. The Pentagon doesn't like whistleblowers. We already have targets, Grayson said. At least this way, Cross can't kill us quietly. Fair point. Send the files. I'll have something ready by noon. The call ended. Grayson immediately began uploading the files from the hard drives to Rachel's encrypted server. Sloan sat in silence, watching the upload progress bar crawl across the screen. When this was done, there was no taking it back. Aubrey Walsh would disappear forever. Everyone would know Sloan Maddox was alive. You okay? Grayson asked, noticing her expression. I'm ready, she said quietly. I'm tired of being dead. The upload took 47 minutes. When it was complete, Grayson sent a text, files sent, verify and publish. Time is critical. The response came back almost immediately. Files verified, legal approved. Story goes live at 11:30, brace for impact. Sloan checked her watch. 11:30 was 90 minutes away. 90 minutes until Vice Admiral Rutger Cross's world came crashing down. We should check on the Admiral, she said. They found Sterling in the hallway outside Thorne's room, looking tense. We have a problem, he said without preamble. Hospital administration called Dr. Cross 20 minutes ago. They want to discharge the Admiral to Bethesda Naval Hospital. Full medical transport. Leaves in 3 hours. That's a kill box, Sloan said immediately. The second Thorne is in transport, Cross will hit the convoy. That's what I figured, Sterling agreed. I've been stalling, but administration is pushing hard. Cross is using his rank to force the move, Grayson said. Get Thorne somewhere vulnerable where he can finish the job. Sloan's mind raced. We can't stop the transfer without revealing why. And if we do that, Cross will accelerate his timeline. So what do we do? Sterling asked. We make sure the story breaks before Thorne leaves this building. Sloan checked her watch again. Rachel said 11:30. That gives us 2 hours. Sterling, delay that transfer as long as possible. Equipment malfunctions, paperwork errors, patient instability, whatever it takes. I can give you 2 hours, maybe 2.5. 2 hours is enough. Inside the ICU room, Admiral Thorne was awake and sitting up despite Dr. Cross's protests. The color had returned to his face and his eyes were clear. When he saw Sloan and Grayson enter, he smiled. I hear you two went to Coronado, he said. I hear there was some excitement. 6 operators, Grayson replied, all former DEVGRU. Cross sent his best. And you both walked away. Thorne's smile widened. That's why you're legends. Sloan moved to his bedside. Admiral, the evidence is being published in 90 minutes. Washington Post. Front page. By noon, everyone will know what Cross did, what Operation Nightfall is, where those 12 SEALs are. Thorne closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. 5 years. 5 years I've been gathering evidence, trying to find a way to expose this without getting killed. And you did it in 24 hours. We did it together, sir, Sloan said gently. You found the evidence. You survived long enough to tell us where to find it. No, Thorne's voice was firm. You gave me hope. When I saw you in that ER, when I heard your voice, I thought I was hallucinating. But you were real. And if Reaper could come back from the dead, then maybe we could win this fight. Before Sloan could respond, Dr. Cross entered slightly out of breath. I just got off the phone with the CDC. They're running tests on the potassium chloride from the Admiral's IV. The chemical signature doesn't match hospital stock. It matches a batch stolen from a military research facility in Virginia 3 months ago. Ghost ship, Sloan said. They've been planning this for months. There's more, Cross continued. The CDC flagged the case to the FBI. They're sending agents to interview the Admiral. They'll be here in 40 minutes. Sloan and Grayson exchanged glances. That's good, Sloan said. Federal investigation means Cross can't bury this administratively. And by the time the FBI arrives, the Post story will be breaking. Dr. Cross looked between them. Will someone please tell me what the hell is going on? Who are you people really? Admiral Thorne spoke up. Dr. Cross, how much do you know about your father's service? Dr. Cross went very still. Why? Because your father was a SEAL, Thorne said gently. Lieutenant Marcus Cross, SEAL Team 2, 1997 to 2003, Iraq and Afghanistan. He was a good operator, a good man. How do you know that? Because I was his commanding officer. Thorne's voice was heavy with old grief. And I was the one who had to tell your mother that he'd been killed in Fallujah. 2004, sniper. He died saving 3 Marines. Dr. Cross's eyes filled with tears. He killed himself. That's what my mother told me. She said he came home broken, that he couldn't live with what he'd seen. That's what she told you because that's what we told her, Thorne said quietly. We couldn't tell her the truth, that her husband died a hero, because the operation was classified. So we lied. We said PTSD. We said suicide. We let her think he was weak instead of letting her know he was one of the bravest men I ever commanded. Dr. Cross sat down hard. Why are you telling me this now? Because you deserve to know the truth. And because what's about to happen, what's about to be exposed, it's going to shake the Navy to its core. People are going to question everything. And I need you to know that your father died with honor. Dr. Cross was crying openly now. What does this have to do with what's happening now? Because 12 more SEALs are in the same situation your father was in, Sloan said. Captured, tortured, held in places that officially don't exist. And just like your father, their families have been lied to. But we're going to bring them home, and we're going to make sure everyone knows what was done to them. Dr. Cross looked up at Sloan. What do you need from me? Keep Admiral Thorne alive for the next 2 hours, Sloan said. After that, this whole thing goes public. Cross can't touch him without exposing himself. He stays in this room, Dr. Cross said, her voice suddenly hard. No transfers. I don't care what administration says, this is my patient. They'll try to override you. Let them try. Dr. Cross stood wiping her eyes. My father died serving his country. The least I can do is protect the man who commanded him. At 11:15, Sloan's phone rang. Rachel. We're going live in 15 minutes, she said. But you need to know something. In the last hour, I've received 3 phone calls from Pentagon officials trying to kill the story. They're threatening lawsuits, national security violations. Someone very high up is very scared. That means we're over the target, Sloan said. Publish anyway. We are. But Commander, you need to understand the magnitude of what's about to happen. This isn't just going to destroy Cross. This is going to trigger investigations into Special Operations Command Naval Intelligence, the Joint Chiefs. People are going to go to prison. I know. Are you ready for that? Sloan looked at Admiral Thorne alive because she'd refused to let him die. She looked at Grayson, 62 years old, still fighting because the mission mattered. She thought about 12 SEALs in black sites. She thought about Dr. Cross's father, who died a hero, but whose family was told he was weak. I'm ready, she said. At 11:30, the story broke. The headline was simple and devastating. Navy Admiral Iran torture network sold classified intel to enemies. Within minutes, it was trending everywhere. News networks called for statements. The Pentagon was in chaos. And Vice Admiral Rutger Cross's name was everywhere. Sloan watched it unfold on Grayson's computer, refreshing news pages as the story spread. Rachel had done her job well. Every detail, every piece of evidence, every financial transaction, every photograph of tortured SEALs. It was all there. This is how we win, Grayson said quietly. Not with bullets, with truth. At noon, the FBI arrived. Two agents in dark suits, federal credentials expressions that said they'd seen the news. They interviewed Admiral Thorne for 90 minutes. When they were done, the lead agent turned to Sloan. Commander Maddox, we'd like to interview you as well. They moved to a private conference room. The agent, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes, sat across from Sloan. According to our records, you were killed in action in Kandahar in 2019. Yet here you are. Would you care to explain? Sloan had prepared for this. I was recruited by the CIA after Kandahar. They offered me a deal. Go dark, operate off-book, and they'd protect my team from retaliation. I accepted. Operating off-book is illegal, Commander. So is torturing American servicemen and selling classified intelligence to foreign governments. I chose the lesser crime. The agent's expression didn't change. We'll need to verify your story. Good luck. The operation was black, but I can give you names, operational details, enough to confirm I'm telling the truth. You realize you're going to be under investigation for months. The CIA doesn't like it when their assets go public. I understand. You could face charges. I could, Sloan agreed, but I won't, because I have evidence that I was operating under CIA authority, and because the alternative is letting Cross get away with torturing 12 American servicemen. The agent studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled slightly. My brother was a SEAL, killed in Syria 2017, officially training accident. Unofficially, I've never gotten a straight answer. So off the record, Commander, I hope you burn the whole corrupt system to the ground. She slid a business card across the table. That's my direct line. Use it if you need it. At 3 in the afternoon, Vice Admiral Rutger Cross was arrested at his office in Coronado. The images were broadcast live, Cross being led out in handcuffs, his face stone, refusing to answer questions. Within hours, 7 other flag officers, 2 Joint Chiefs members, and 3 senators were also taken into custody. It was the largest military corruption case in American history. That evening, Sloan sat beside Admiral Thorne's bed. He was stable, sitting up, able to have a real conversation. Grayson stood by the window watching the sunset. They're calling you a hero, Thorne said, the woman who exposed Operation Nightfall. I'm not a hero, Sloan said. I'm just someone who refused to let good men die for a lie. That's the definition of a hero. Thorne smiled, which is why I'm recommending you for reinstatement with full rank and honors. Lieutenant Commander Sloan Maddox, back from the dead. Sloan was quiet for a long time, then as she shook her head, I can't, Admiral. Why not? Because I've been dead for 5 years. I've built a life in the shadows. Coming back means facing people I left behind, answering questions I don't want to answer. What about the mission? The teams need you. The teams need warriors. I'm not sure I'm a warrior anymore. Before Thorne could respond, Grayson walked over. Commander, can I talk to you outside? In the hallway, Grayson looked at her seriously. You're making a mistake. Master Chief, let me finish. I've been where you are. I retired 5 years ago, left the teams, took a job as a security director because I didn't know what else I was good for. You know what I learned? Sloan waited. Being a warrior isn't about fighting. It's about protecting, standing between danger and people who can't defend themselves. That doesn't end when you leave the teams. It doesn't end until you're dead. I'm not refusing to protect people. I just don't want to go back to the violence. Then don't. Come back as something different. A teacher, a trainer, someone who helps the next generation survive what you survived. We need that more than we need another trigger puller. Sloan felt something shift inside her. A teacher? You've got more combat experience than half the instructors at BUD/S. You've survived things that should have killed you. Don't you think that knowledge is worth passing on? Before she could answer, Dr. Cross appeared. Commander Maddox, I have a proposition. This hospital needs a military liaison, someone who understands combat trauma, someone who can work with veterans who come through our ER broken and scared, someone who can bridge the gap between the military world and the civilian world. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a purpose. Stay here. Work with me. Help me build a program that actually serves the people who served us, not as Aubrey Walsh, as yourself, as Commander Sloan Maddox. Sloan felt tears burning behind her eyes. For 5 years, she'd been invisible, and now 2 people were offering her a way back, not to who she was, but to who she could become. I'll think about it, she managed. 3 days later, Admiral Thorne was stable enough to be transferred to Bethesda. The 12 missing SEALs had been located and extraction operations were underway. Vice Admiral Cross and 7 others were in custody, and the entire military establishment was reeling. Sloan stood in the hospital parking garage, loading her belongings into her Honda Civic. She was leaving, not running, but taking time to think. Grayson found her as she was closing the trunk. Where are you headed? I don't know, somewhere quiet. You'll come back though, right? Sloan looked at him. Why would I? Because you're not done yet. None of us are. He handed her a card. That's my direct line. When you're ready, call me. She took the card. Then on impulse, she hugged him. The first real human contact she'd had in 5 years that wasn't violence or deception. Thank you, Master Chief, she whispered, for believing in me. Always Reaper, always. Sloan got in her car, but before she drove away, she pulled out her phone and made a call. This is Commander Sloan Maddox. I'm requesting reinstatement to active duty. The voice asked a question. What assignment, not operations, not combat? I want to teach. I want to train the next generation of SEALs how to survive what I survived. Another question. Yes, I'm sure. A pause. Then the voice said something that made her eyes fill with tears. Commander, this is Admiral Thorne. I've been waiting for this call. Your KIA status was revoked 10 minutes ago. Welcome back to the teams. 6 months later, the Naval Special Warfare Training Facility in Coronado buzzed with activity. 40 SEAL candidates stood at attention in a classroom. It was the first co-ed class in the program's history. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hayes stood at the front. Today you're learning about combat medicine in traumatic scenarios. A voice from behind, and trauma doesn't just mean physical wounds. The candidates turned. A woman walked in. Compact 5'4" blonde hair in a regulation bun, Navy utilities with commander's insignia, a thin scar above her left eyebrow, small shrapnel scars on her hands. I'm Commander Sloan Maddox, she said, her gray-blue eyes scanning the room. Call sign Reaper, first woman to complete SEAL selection, DevGru operator for 8 years. I've saved lives in combat zones from Afghanistan to Syria to Iraq. The room was silent. I've eliminated enemies in over 40 missions. I've been shot, stabbed, blown up, and left for dead. The Navy declared me killed in action in 2019. They folded my flag, they fired the salute, they mourned me. She paused. But the most important thing I learned when not to fight. When to be the healer instead of the warrior. Because our job isn't to take lives, it's to protect them. And sometimes protecting lives means knowing when to pull the trigger. And sometimes it means knowing when to put the gun down and pick up a scalpel. She smiled, transforming her face. So let's get started. Pair up. Today we're learning needle decompression in the field. By the end of this course, you'll be able to do it in the dark under fire with your best friend bleeding out beside you. The candidates paired off energized. Sloan walked among them, teaching the next generation how to survive the wars she'd barely escaped. At the back of the room, Master Chief Declan Grayson stood watching, a proud smile on his face. He'd come out of retirement to serve as senior instructor because Sloan had asked, because the mission wasn't over. Dr. Cross had also come serving as trauma specialist for the program. Her father's legacy lived on in the lives she saved and the knowledge she shared. Together, they were building something new. Not just a fighting force, but a healing force. Training warriors who understood that strength wasn't just about violence. Later that afternoon, after the candidates left, Sloan stood looking at the SEAL trident mounted on the wall. Grayson joined her. You did good today, he said. It felt right, Sloan replied. For the first time in 5 years, it felt right. That's because you're not pretending anymore. You're just being who you are. And who is that? Grayson smiled. You're a warrior who learned that the real fight isn't always on the battlefield. Sometimes it's in classrooms like this. Sloan's phone buzzed, a text from an encrypted number. Reaper, this is Ironside. We have a problem. The 12 SEALs we extracted aren't talking. Something happened in those black sites. Something worse than torture. We need you. Sloan showed the message to Grayson. He read it and sighed. The mission never ends, does it? No, Sloan agreed. It doesn't. What are you going to do? Sloan looked at the trident on the wall, at the classroom where she just taught 40 young warriors, at Grayson who believed in her, at the phone asking her to step back into darkness to save brothers who needed her. I'm going to do what I always do, she said quietly. I'm going to protect the people who can't protect themselves. I'm going to stand between them and the darkness, and I'm going to fight like hell to bring them home. She typed a response to Admiral Thorne. I'm coming. Send me the details. Then she looked at Grayson. You and Master Chief? Always Reaper, always. They walked out of the training facility together as the sun set over Coronado, painting the sky golden red. Behind them, the SEAL trident gleamed on the wall, a symbol of everything they'd fought for. But ahead, the road stretched into darkness. And somewhere in that darkness, 12 broken SEALs waited for rescue, waited for someone who understood, waited for someone who knew how to fight death itself and win. They were waiting for Reaper, and Reaper was coming.